we're actually so much stronger in pregnancy than we think, but we just don't understand what it does to our body. Hello, and welcome to Partners Beyond Parenthood, the podcast that helps new parents thrive without losing themselves. My name is Saba Bazuner, and today I am joined by Dr. Jen Fabroni from Doc Jen Fit, as you may know her more commonly. Really excited to have you here today. Appreciate you so much. I know that you're going through pregnancy and a lot right now, so it is really, really great to have you. I would love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself briefly to the listeners here today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. I am, as I said, Dr. Jen Fraboni, Doctor of Physical Therapy. I graduated in 2015 and never expected that I'd be a business owner or doing anything that I'm doing now. But, social media has just kind of stumbled my way into education. And from there, I decided, I don't know if people are really getting the grasp of how they could help their bodies just through posting. So what if I put out something that they could use? And from there, it just continued to grow. And we launched our own app and platform called Jen Health to help really walk people through a day-to-day process, whether they're having low back pain or shoulder pain or hip pain. And it's continued to grow, and I'm so grateful for the feedback that we get to hear and how we can continue to expand upon our platform to help people out of pain.
Yep. And when you say our, does that mean that you started this with your husband, Dom, I believe? Or did you start it and then he kind of joined on board, or did he come on board then?
The first time I launched online programs, it was just me. I didn't know him at the time. Once we got together and then COVID hit and he kind of lost all his current opportunities that he was building. And so he said, how can I help? What can I do? And he just decided to kind of see where gaps were and what we could be doing on a larger scale to help people. And he did come in and help me launch Jen Health and create what it is today. We started the Optimal Body podcast together. Being another physical therapist, he's the side of like applied physiology where I kind of apply it now, translate that into the body of how someone can then use it. And so it's been an incredible process to be able to do with my husband, and I'm very grateful.
I mean, that's incredible. There aren't that many other couples I meet who work together with their partners, right? On top of, being a parent now, having one and another on the way, how has that journey been working with him?
I'd say the hardest thing is that we have to put work aside. And when we have date nights and connection nights, it's like, okay, how much are we actually going to talk about work and how much are we going to put that aside and just talk like a regular couple, because we are so passionate about what we do and we love what we do. And so I think sometimes it gets mixed, but we try to do this every month, and we'll see how it continues when we have another. But we had a little book that we created called Couples Goals, and it would go through goals that we would make together every month as a couple, individual goals, professional individual goals, and so on. And
Awesome.
We kind of would start that. And then we realized, putting it down in a book and putting the book away, we would forget about them. And so we started putting it on a whiteboard on our fridge. So anyone who comes over can see our goals as well. But it was just so much easier to have little boxes and check marks. And, even if we don't hit our goal, we see our intention of what we're trying to bring together as a couple, individually, for myself, for my business, and what I'm doing within that part. And so we do our best to maintain that every month. I will say it's not perfect, but it's our way of intending to maintain our connection as a couple, together and individually.
Does he handle one part of the business and you handle another, or how does that work?
We handle different aspects, which is also wonderful. We have different brains in terms of that, so it's great.
Okay, so strengths, weaknesses, I guess.
Yes.
I work with my husband as well in our own business, so we definitely try and use that as well.
Yeah,
because otherwise it would just be it would be chaos.
Exactly.
How long did it take you guys to kind of get to the point where you realize, okay, we can't just talk about work, or we can't just talk about family, or, I mean, both of you doing the same thing, obviously, and being very passionate about it from what I can see. how long did that development take to be like, okay, no, this has got to stop?
Let's see. I would say maybe about 6 months into working together, that's when we decided to come up with these goals and write them out and really get clear on like, okay, what does connection time look like and how are we setting that aside? And and now, with our first child, we were able to bring on a nanny. Very grateful for that. And we were able to have a date night. And we scheduled, what are we going to do every once a week so that we're taking that time together and just spending that together. And that was super helpful and a really great way to say, okay, we're shutting off work and this is our time together. And this is where we get to just connect and be as a couple. Obviously, that's going to shift once a new baby comes in. I do like to breastfeed. And so I have a baby attached to me usually in the very beginning. So we'll just see how it continues to evolve and if we have more kids, if we don't, and what that looks like. I think as life continues to shift and move, you kind of have to be able to be flexible with goals and ideas and situations and just phases of life that you're in.
That sounds very healthy. No, thanks for sharing that. Now with the second one coming along, are there certain things that you've kind of already, you never know how it's going to be, right? You never know what kind of baby you're going to have, the temperament, etc. You've already said you want to be breastfeeding. Have you already decided business-wise how that would be split between you two? Like, are you taking some time for yourself? Like, have you actively, made steps towards how you think it's going to look like after?
Yeah. So with me being so face on camera, there is a lot that we've had to prep. So we're recording this, you and I together in November, and baby is due sometime in December. And we have recorded our podcast out through June. So we're at least batched through June where we can, not have to get back into things until like late spring, really. And then we are batched with YouTubes as well for, I think, almost to June. So same thing. I don't have to be on camera for quite a while. So in terms of the front-facing stuff that's really important and that we really want to keep up with, we've batched as much as we can so that I don't have to feel rushed back. And then in terms of back-end stuff that no one gets to see, but we're always continuing to work, we have figured out ways for him and another person within our business to kind of step in and take on some tasks that I have been, doing regularly. And I've planned out a ton so that they could step in and understand where my brain was and what where I was kind of going with a lot of things. So a lot of it is just so much planning, which has made these last few months very busy. In terms of work, but that's what you do as an entrepreneur who needs to, kind of have at least a little bit of a maternity leave for connection with baby. And I have to say, like last time that we had a baby, we had that in place and I wasn't stressed about it. And I came back probably earlier than most, but in ways that I didn't have to be stuck somewhere. I could be a little bit more flexible. I can have my baby with me. And so I'm grateful to be able to do what I do and be able to mold back in as I feel comfortable.
Right. That sounds amazing. I wish I had some of those skills to plan so far ahead. I'm also currently expecting, but I'm definitely not on that wavelength. So maybe I can learn a few more things from you. But that is awesome. And I've also just started your mobility challenge. I'm a little bit behind, but that is incredible. I love that you have all these different options. It's great. I'm trying to get my husband in as well. So we're both really benefiting, even if we've just, I think we're on day 3, although it's a bit further, but you do what you can. I have a toddler.
Yeah, exactly. I get it.
I bet. And I'm perhaps not as planned out as you, but no, I absolutely love what you're doing. And I think everything that has spoken to me, I think the first thing I saw from you on social media, or the first thing that stuck with me was the chair, just like what you work on, etc. Because I do sit a lot. And that kind of caught my attention. I started following you more and I was just like, wow, she really knows like so much. And it's not like this whole a one-size-fits-all aspect. That's not what I get from you. So one question I have for you is, during your pregnancy, and obviously knowing so much about your body and bodies in general, as well as your husband being able to have a different perspective, how do you feel that that has translated into how you carry your pregnancies and I guess also your first postpartum?
Mm-hmm. I feel very, very grateful to be so in tune and know the body the way that I do, because obviously many people don't have that access or that information. And so I feel spoiled in that sense to have that information, not only have that information, but I have access to a friend who's a pelvic floor physical therapist that I've had been able to see throughout, a couple times in my first pregnancy. Not that I needed it, but having that awareness and having that feedback, having someone go internal in my pelvic health and my pelvic floor and understand, okay, here are areas of tension that I can work on outside of needing someone. And so having that available is such a privilege, and I'm so grateful for it. But I know that not everyone has access to that. And so that's why I try to do so many free videos as well, where it's just like, here's what you could be doing on your own to start to address these pains and these symptoms that come up along the way. And something it's not the sexy thing on social media that people want to see, but the thing I always try to push and promote is that pain is generated from our brain. And so it's how we perceive it. And especially when our body starts to shift into something so completely new, that is pregnancy, and we're now carrying weight in a way different way, and we're feeling something so different in our body, we are going to have different sensations pop up. We have hormones that are causing more laxity. So we're experiencing things within our body that we've never experienced before. So pain is going to be prevalent, but it's now how we address it and saying, oh, that's a new, interesting sensation. Not necessarily a pain, but that's a new, interesting sensation I haven't heard or I haven't felt before. But my body is just alerting me that something is new and different. So how can I work within that to now create and feel something different? And so I know that every time I feel that twinge or that pain, it's like, okay, what do I need to do to help my body to feel safe again? And that's all pain is. Pain is an alarm system. Pain is an alert that something needs to change. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when we experience pain, it's such a fearful mechanism because you don't know what is happening, why it's happening. And often we associate pain with being bad. And I think that's where we fall into a rabbit hole of then going down and, either seeking treatments that aren't always as beneficial or stop moving at all because we're so afraid of making anything worse. And especially again, in pregnancy and postpartum, and your body is going through so many different hormonal shifts, sleep deprivation, and the way that our weight is changing and our body is changing, and so many different things that your body's never experienced before. Different sensations are going to pop up. So it's not a matter of stopping moving. It's a matter of understanding what movements I need to add in. And especially during pregnancy, again, with that laxity from the hormones, I usually recommend strength training. And I recommend, if you're able to, and if you get the sign off, keep your body strong because it needs that safety and that stability within the body as things are changing so that we're not feeling those sensations as severely. And it's only going to help you postpartum no matter what kind of birth you have, because all of a sudden you're carrying and you're holding and you're bending over and you're picking up and you're doing all these motions that require strength within the body. And if we haven't prepped the body during pregnancy and all of a sudden we're postpartum and carrying what we think is small, but they're going to grow and there's so much repetitive movement with them, we need that strength within our body. So I always try to, yes, walking is great. And yes, we want to keep moving. And as much as you can, maintain your strength. And there's still ways that you can get stronger even during pregnancy in a very safe manner. It is so crucial so that we help to reduce and mitigate symptoms that we're feeling in our body and talk to our body in a new and different way. Hopefully that helped to answer.
No, extremely. I think I had a few questions, but you kind of answered most of them within that. But to confirm some of those, I was going to actually ask, from the experience that you have and the knowledge that you have, would there be something that you can prioritize within pregnancy to, better your postpartum journey? Sounds like strength is the one from what you just said. As you'd also mentioned, it needs to be safe for you and your own body. And this is also very much what you kind of, preach. And this also comes from a personal experience where I was up until recently still doing quite high intensity classes. I stopped now because I just didn't feel that was right for me. But there I found it very interesting because a lot of the trainers, they register that you're pregnant. So everyone knows. But you'll go in and they'll be like, oh, I had a pregnant lady up until she was 8-9 months. And it's like, oh, I had another one doing 8-9 months. And then I did another very different class. And they're like, oh, I had, another pregnant woman doing wall walks. And I think it's so dangerous because especially coming back to the term safe, if you don't know your own body and you hear about other women doing it, we're actually so much stronger in pregnancy than we think, but we just don't understand what it does to our body, right? So my question here is, how can you listen to your own body when you obviously don't know? You're in a position to kind of really understand that, and then you're told by trainers who, hope or have the best intentions for you.
Yeah.
How do you know who to trust? And do you your body or the trainer?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's tough because if we do tell women to just listen to your body and know when to adjust, that's not helpful because that's not really providing any information, right? And so in an ideal world, you would work with a trainer who has a pregnancy and a pregnancy certification or something along the lines where they understand a little bit more of the nuances that go on. But again, not accessible to everyone. Or you're working with a pelvic floor physical therapist who can say, oh, you're doing these exercises. Here is how I recommend you modify them. Again, not always accessible. So in an ideal sense, that's the top level, is that you're working with someone who has that better understanding so that can help guide you. On the other level, there's so many resources now for free online with many pelvic floor physical therapists or physical therapists in general who understand pregnancy and postpartum and the body that we can now go to. And so what I try to do as well is okay, let's look at how you're doing core exercises. If you notice that there's a lot of coning starting to happen and the midline of your stomach and your abdomen is starting to come up with a lot of these more intense type exercises, it's not unsafe. It's common. It's normal. Your core is going to change. And, now your body is saying, okay, there's too much pressure in one way. How can I modify that movement so that I take pressure off of that and I have a more connected core and trunk and pelvis all working together? And so that's ways that you can start to identify within your own body, oh, that's putting a little too much pressure in one area. Let's see how I can modify and change that exercise. Even if it doesn't feel hard yet, it might your body is still talking to you in a way that you might not have realized before. So that's one of the things that I like to tell women to kind of look out for. We know now from research as well that high intensity exercise, especially if you were doing it prior to pregnancy, isn't something that you have to stop. It just depends on your own body and how you're feeling. If you don't feel good about it, if you don't feel safe about it, you stop it. So that's where listening to your own body and understanding what is best for you is so incredibly important. For a lot of women, a lot of single leg activities like running start to become problematic within the pelvis. So then that's another indication of okay, my body is asking for something to change and something to be different. And then the only thing that we really want to be very aware of during pregnancy is that we're not putting our body in a position that we can get severely injured. So that's where modifying the load or modifying the intensity, how quickly we're doing an exercise can really be helpful to reduce falls or something dropping on you or, anything like that. Now, within that, we can still say, okay, I'm going to lift heavy for this muscle group in a way that I feel safe and controlled, and maybe I have support or I have someone spotting me. So there's different ways we can still get our muscles to that level of fatigue that causes that, that change that we're really positively looking for in terms of strength without kind of avoiding some of the risk that we might be coming up against as well. So I think there's a combination. There's a combination of listening to your body and just doing your gut feeling of what feels good for you. And then there's also if we can rely on trainers to help us understand, oh yeah, your core is doing this. Let's figure out a way to modify it. So even if they don't know specifically, if they're starting to see that your body is struggling in a certain way or not optimized anymore, let's see how we can both work together so you can tell me when something might need to change. And it's okay. Like modifying throughout pregnancy and postpartum is one of the best things that we can do, because then that is going to help us to continue to be able to move without getting into overstressing our body or overdoing it within our body.
Thank you. Makes a lot of sense. One thing I'd like to ask about that you mentioned pretty much at the beginning about coning, that is one of the more clearer ways of identifying that, maybe you need to adapt. For myself, I've never noticed it. Like, can be I have a little bit more around the tummy. I just don't see that. How else could you identify that?
So it's really just in like higher level core exercises. And this sometimes doesn't appear for women until like into second trimester and into third trimester, where the belly is really getting stretched because we're getting so much of that tissue tension. And one easy way you can kind of usually notice it toward the end of second and into third trimester is if you try to sit up. So if you're laying down and you try to sit up, typically your rectus abdominis muscle wants to kick on. However, that is the muscle in the midline of our body that's being stretched. And so what we typically see when we try to sit up or we lay down is that we see this coning effect kind of happen. And again, normal for the body to do because your body wants to use that muscle. But we start to lose access and control to our other muscles that help engage the core as well. And so that's where we say, okay, maybe instead of just sitting up, if I start to see that, I'm going to roll to my side and I'm going to push up with my hand so that I just am not putting that excess pressure. Again, not something that's terrible. That's normal within the body. And how can we adjust and modify it so we don't see it as much? And so a lot of core exercises laying on our back actually put a ton of pressure, and those can be some of the hardest during pregnancy and postpartum. So I like to start to adjust core exercises to now sitting on a ball, on a physio ball or a Swiss ball. And you're starting to do marches, or you're starting to do little leans of the chest, and you're really engaging in the core in a different way. A lot of exercises that involve hanging. So a lot of exercises that people, leg lifts or pull-ups, a lot of people will start to see coning in those instances, but there are some people who can do pull-ups all the way through and never see any symptoms or signs. So it is so dependent on the person, and there's no one way. We don't have research that shows if you see a level of coning, you're for sure going to be stuck with diastasis after. We don't know that. And what we do know is that diastasis recti, that separation of the linea alba that happens during pregnancy, is 100% normal in pregnancy because it is a natural adaptation of our body to have a stretched belly. How amazing. Most
Thank
cases,
God.
yeah. And in most cases, without doing anything, the body is going to heal postpartum and you're not going to have any issues with it. For some women, and a lot of times we just then go, maybe it's just genetic, that for some reason that tissue doesn't heal quite as well as for other people. And so there's no set guideline, unfortunately, of this is the exercise that you can't do, this is the exercise that you should be doing, because it's so dependent on the person and their function and their comfortability with it. But what we can say is, okay, if we start to see that coning, let's just see if we can modify that movement. So for me, push-ups on the floor, then turn into push-ups on an elevated surface. I feel more in control. I can still go slow and feel that like my upper body is really doing a lot of work without putting so much tension onto my core. Again, exercises laying on my back. I can now do seated core exercises on a Swiss ball. Hanging, I modify now. Rather than hanging on a bar, I place like a barbell on a rack, and I can do pull-ups with my legs assisting me as I'm going through the motion. So there's ways that we can always modify any kind of movement. It's just starting to identify and look for those signs.
Awesome. Thank you. That was a very, very clear answer.
Okay.
And not just for myself, I'm sure for many people, because I've heard that so many times. I've joined different fitness programs. It's like, when you see coning, and I'm like, I don't see it.
Yeah, which is okay. And that's great. Everybody would be different.
Yeah, well, maybe it'll still come. Who knows? For postpartum, is there something that you follow yourself specifically or have followed or that you plan to follow?
So for me, one of the best things postpartum that we can start doing immediately is breath work. And I know how involved and tied in the diaphragm is into our internal core system that gets all funky. And so that is the number one exercise I started with immediately. I actually ended up in a cesarean for my first birth. So that felt really good for me to really incorporate diaphragmatic breathing and get in touch with the core. But same if you have a vaginal birth, even if you feel a lot of things that are very heavy down, you can actually lay on your back, prop some pillows underneath your hips, bend your knees, and you'll have that gravity-assisted breath. So if you do feel a lot of pressure out into the vagina, that's a great way to have that gravity-assisted exercise that you can do, and it's just breathing. So it's not stressing the body. It's not, we're utilizing our core, but in a very gentle way. So that's one of the things that I love to do immediately. I also
is what, like day one?
Yeah.
Okay. Like you're in the hospital bed, you can start then already?
You can start diaphragmatic breathing. Yeah. Okay. And one of the ways that I really address this is diaphragmatic breathing doesn't mean that you're doing belly breathing. Your diaphragm rests underneath your rib cage. So one of the greatest ways to kind of get that feedback is to place your hands along your low rib cage and kind of squeeze it, and then try to breathe into your hands. And you get that lateral expansion of that rib cage, and the belly relaxes and goes with the journey, but it's not a forceful belly breath out. And so if we can get that rib cage kind of moving a little bit better, a deep breath in, kind of taking 3 seconds, and then a really slow, long exhale, about 4 to 6 seconds. That is a great way to start just diaphragmatic breathing and kind of reprogramming how that diaphragm and that inner core are starting to work together, because that is one of the biggest things when we come back. Obviously, as soon as you feel ready to start just even getting up, walking around the room, getting your feet moving, that's a great way to get in some early movement. Any kind of upper back mobility, shoulder mobility, chest stretches are so good, and something that I maintain, all throughout postpartum, but something that you can start to do pretty much right away within the first week and two of postpartum. You can just start to do some really gentle opening of the chest, extension. Even if you were just to lay back in your bed and press your arms back into the bed, like you're activating your muscles without doing anything too strenuous, right? And then for me, being from a cesarean, it was starting to say, okay, how can I just start to feel comfortable extending my stomach? And how can I put just gentle stretch onto my stomach? And so starting around 3 to 4 weeks of standing upright as much as possible, extending back as much as I felt comfortable, and then starting to do cat-cows as well to, again, stretch that tissue along the abdomen. That is one of the first ways that you can start to mobilize that scar without touching and mobilizing the scar. And I did put together a little free guide if you want that link for anyone. It goes through like a weekly guide of exercises that I recommend and scar mobilization if you had a cesarean.
Awesome. Might have to look into that myself. I had a cesarean.
Oh.
That's fascinating to hear that you can start, with that exercise first. I don't know why doctors in general, like your obstetrician, doesn't tell you these things, or why they don't even have to have the knowledge. It's just knowing that you can start with breathing exercises. I feel like that would be so helpful. Again, they're not guiding you. They're not trying to give you that kind of, prescription. But it's just like, you can start with that. Because I definitely had a lot of fear of when I should start and everything. And then I started way too much. I used to do CrossFit. And so my postpartum journey was crazy, but I'd actually love to hear about yours. How was your postpartum journey?
I felt really good and connected to my body after my first pregnancy. And I attribute that humongously to the fact that I was able to work out throughout all of my pregnancy and feel so strong. I mean, I didn't have my baby till 42 weeks, and I was lifting up until 41 weeks. So
wow.
I feel very grateful to have had that strength within the body. I think that carried through really seamlessly into postpartum to really help my journey. And then starting with the breath and the mobility, and then gradually, getting into supported squats. And I even started, how I would rock my baby. I would just do some squats with him, just like really shortened range of motion, or like little lunges, and starting to get things that was closer to like 5 weeks, but starting to get a little bit more movement in my body. And so by the time 6 weeks did come around, I felt really good in my body that I could go back to a workout, and I had no symptoms. I had no pelvic floor symptoms. I mean, pregnancy in general, no matter what kind of birth you have, is going to put a lot of tension and pressure on your pelvic floor. Yep. So just making sure that you're integrating your pelvic floor back into your rehab process is so essential and so key. I was able to get back into things, and by 3 months, I was doing pull-ups and leg lifts again with no signs of coning or abdomen separations. I attribute so much of that to pregnancy and being strong in pregnancy to be able to carry over into postpartum. And I can't stress how much your postpartum journey starts with how much you do in pregnancy.
I feel like that's a key phrase here. No, but it's very true. And I think it's really great. I love also following you right now because, I'm pregnant, and, being able to see what you can do. I think that's also inspiring, especially coming from someone who really knows the body in general. So yeah, thanks again.
Thank you.
With regards to your baby that's coming now, you mentioned you had a cesarean. How are you preparing mentally for the next one? I don't know if you are planning to have another C-section, or what's your mindset on that?
Yeah. Well, first, my mindset was really finding a supportive team, no matter which way I wanted to go, whether I wanted to do a scheduled gentle cesarean or whether I wanted to do a VBAC. I wanted to be in an environment that would support any decision, and I felt really safe with in a hospital setting, because that also was important to me this time around. So I ended up finding a group of midwives, and they are very, very supportive, very good VBAC rate, but also very supportive of a scheduled gentle cesarean, would be in the room with me with the OB and, support whatever process I decided. So I've just done a lot of education myself on VBAC, on gentle cesarean, on understanding my options, on understanding the risks of everything, because there's risk in everything, and understanding what I and my family feel best and safe with for all of our options available. So starting to get more education and more awareness just helps you to feel more prepared as you're going in, so that you feel like you're a part of the birthing process. I think that's so huge. And where a lot of people fall into trauma or traumatic events is because they're told what to do rather than having a say along the process. And so for me, making sure that I feel like I can advocate for myself, like I'm very informed and I have the knowledge and education of what I want to ask or what questions I have, has helped me to prepare best I can for the birth that I decide.
I love that. I really respect that as well. I mean, I've learned a lot through this podcast alone, speaking to different people, which has opened my mind to a lot of things. I was very hardcore, like, I'm only going to do VBAC. I'm definitely open to whatever happens now. After having spoken to people who are very educated in this space, right? Like you said, it's so important to find that education, pick your team. Well, I'm very grateful that you've shared that, and that I'm happy for you that you have, the team to support you do that as well. It also seems, I wanted to mention, you have a very supportive husband, from what it seems.
Yes.
Which I think is incredible.
Yeah.
How did you guys discuss your birthing plan, if I may ask that?
Yeah.
Obviously, without, giving away what you plan on doing. What were things that you both came together and were like, okay, these are important to either of us?
He was really open to what I felt most comfortable with, and then really understanding, okay, what is the decision that you really feel confident in, and how can I best support you in that? And he also now, having gone through a cesarean with me, understands the support that is needed after a cesarean, if that's the route that we go through, But he is very much, he asks the questions, okay, how can I support what you're wanting, and make sure that you mentally are prepared to stick into that mindset as well. And so I really appreciate that he understands, but also asks those deeper questions. And then we do seek like a doula for more support as well, so that we have just more resources and more understanding of how we could support my body.
Okay. I was going to say, he almost sounded like your doula, but I guess there's still the other doula coming. No, that's incredible. Can definitely share that with my husband as well. When it comes time to, I guess, planning that. One more question I have. How do you find the time with a toddler, with all the work that's, you've been preparing, finding time to be with your husband as, just partners, not just the parents? How do you find the time to prioritize things that are important for yourself? Be it mobility, exercise, strength, etc.
Yeah. So for myself with workouts, I'm huge on accountability and someone showing up for me. So I actually met a friend nearby, and she comes over at a certain time every single day. My husband knows, even if our son wakes up from his nap, like, this is mom's workout time. And so he takes my son and we'll deal with him for a while until I'm done working out. And I also am very cognizant of my workout space. So I only program about 30 to 40 minutes. I no longer do like the hour-long workouts or need to kill my body. I do very structured, very intentional 30 to 40 minutes so that I feel good within my body. And I have a friend that comes and she supports me at a certain time that I know that, okay, I am up, I am doing it, I am doing this for me and my body, which has helped tremendously. I feel like it was easier in the first pregnancy to get up whenever I wanted to, because I had no baby, to be able to work out and do what I wanted. And this time around, I'm just like, well, if she doesn't come, I have an excuse that I could keep working, or I could do something else, or I can. So I really rely on her in so many ways to show up so that we work out together. But it helps to keep me accountable. And I would say there's no shame in that. And then we're pretty good with a routine with our son as well. We have developed that from when he was young, about 6 months. And so he has a routine as to when he goes to bed. And after that, Dom and I are able to still have some connection time and actually be together as a couple without a baby. And I know that doesn't work for everyone. Some people will keep their kid up very late and they all go to bed together, and that's okay. We found that we were able to have more of that connection time if we kept to a routine for him. And so it just is what has happened to be best. And then we do have now date nights that we started probably about 3 months ago with our nanny once we found her.
Okay. Wow.
So we have a date night once a week. And at first it started as like we were going to salsa classes together, which was super fun and learning something new. And now like sometimes it's just like a movie night or a dinner out somewhere. So, we keep it fun, we mix it up, but we have that connection time together.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And funny you said that. So I live in Barcelona, Spain, and culturally here, I know when I go out, 'cause our daughter also goes to sleep pretty early, I guess, for Spanish standards. We put her to sleep at around 7, max 8. Same as you, so that we can kind of still have that time to connect, but then we spoke to others who are from here and they're just like, no, I mean, we have dinner at 9.
Yeah.
Our baby's still there. I'm like, wow, what time do they go to sleep? But yeah, so super interesting, like, what works for different couples and families also just culturally. And also that's crazy. I said, wow, earlier when you mentioned that you only started 3 months ago, because that's quite a long time. I think, if I'm not mistaken, your son is almost 2 or around 2.
He's almost 2.
Right. So that's not so long ago that you started like really intentionally making that time. I think my husband would have gone crazy. I think after like 6 months, he's like, okay, weekly date night.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. We don't have that. And I felt bad asking my mom every time because she's also such a busy lady. Like it feels like an inconvenience to ask her because she always has something going on.
Right.
So we would ask here and there about date nights, but we felt bad about asking for something consistent. So once we got the nanny, then we didn't feel bad anymore.
Right. Yeah. As you should not. But no, thank you so much for being here, Jen. And I'd love to hear if people are interested in learning more about you, what you do, what you offer, where can they find you?
Yeah. So Doc Jen Fit for social medias, on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok, on all the places, is where I provide all my free information. You can DM me and reach out to me. And then jen.health, not .com or anything like that, but jen.health. You can sign up completely for free. And we have a Discover section that allows you to search any of my past videos. So rather than scrolling my Instagram, you can actually just go to jen.health and sign up for free. Even if you don't decide to start a plan or a program or anything like that, you can use our Discover section and find all of my Instagram videos, type in back pain, knee pain, whatever. They're all there. And we also have movement playlists related to sleep or desk life or whatever. Those are all free as well. So we have so much free content on Jen Health to help support your body as well.
That is awesome. And also I'd like to mention on top of that, for people who want even more information, the podcast that you have with your husband, I find absolutely fascinating. The Optimal Body. I've definitely listened to quite a few. I have so many more downloaded because there are so many nuggets of information that literally I have found nowhere else. So thank you both.
Thank you
for, sharing all that you do, for providing so much free information. Because like you mentioned, access to resources is sometimes very difficult, or like the knowledge. I'll make sure to add all of your information in the show notes as well. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in and sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you've just watched and enjoyed this video, I'd be so grateful for a like and if you'd hit the subscribe button. With your support, I'll be able to invite bigger guests and provide more value. If you're listening to the audio only, make sure to follow this podcast to get tips on parenting and partnership and hear inspiring stories from other parents as well. See you next week.